Hey everyone, it's Chelsea. I feel like I don't even need to introduce myself anymore, but you never know who's watching. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys and preparing you guys for this third quarter, last quarter in Aries, which is, I think it's on July 16th. Yeah, I think it's on July 16th. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's on July 16th. So I just want to give you guys a good idea of like what to expect, what to look out for, what the general theme of it is, you know, and to remind you guys that it's important to utilize these moon cycles to progress emotionally, even maybe professionally, especially if Cancer is the sign of your 10th house, if you have the moon in your 10th house, if you have Cancer sun, you could definitely use these moon cycles to invigorate your professional life and to like I don't want to say evolve, but like, you know, redefine your professional life, focus your professional life, and etc., etc. Also your emotional life for everyone involved, even if you don't have a significant amount of energy in Cancer. But anyway, I'm just getting into it. So we have the third quarter in Aries. Aries is a sign, it's the first sign, right? And I think that that is sometimes overlooked or not stressed enough. I feel like it's so important being the first sign, the leader, you know, so individual, so forward moving, so original. And it calls for these attributes to be expressed. We want to express that on this day because the moon is in Aries. So emotionally we'll be thinking, man, I want to do something different. I want to blaze a new trail. I want to go where no one else has gone. I want to do things very different, very individually. I don't necessarily think you want to do things alone. I don't think Aries is a loner, or I don't think they feel like they have to do things alone, but they're very creative. They're very individualistic, and like if they want to do something that somebody else doesn't want to do, somebody else on their team doesn't want to do, they won't feel bad breaking away and say, all right, well, since you're not on board, I'm gonna just do it myself. But the thing is, since it is a half moon moment, there's a lot of tension because a half moon indicates a square between the moon and the sun, and obviously the sun is in Cancer. So, you know, emotionally we may be feeling more reserved. We may be feeling, emotionally we'll be feeling individualistic, but our sense of responsibilities, our callings in life, and our direction in life may be more reserved. Maybe our actions may be more dependent on others. We may feel like retreating into our shell, even though at the moment we may feel like we want to burst forth with all this stuff. At our core, we may want to retreat into our shell, and at our actions may show that we're kind of scared and we're fearful. So there's always a lot of tension with a half moon moment, or a half moon, I don't know what to call it. It's not a cycle, but you know, when the cycle meets the half moons, which happens twice in every lunar cycle. So try to find balance, you know. Squares, like I always say, they're not all bad. You can find ways around them. Try to find a way to maybe do something really radical within yourself, you know, inside of your shell. You know, you, for example, maybe you don't want to, let's say that like you're working on a team project. You don't have to go to the next team meeting and say, this is what I want to do, this is what I have planned, and this is what I think is going to be cool, you know, because that's just disruptive. But instead, you can, on your own time, in regards to that team project, you can work on what you think is cool, individual, original, forward-thinking, all those things. And that is one of the ways that you can like maneuver through this half moon. Another thing that you can do is try to incorporate your ideas into a group setting where you are dependent on others, because that may help foster your idea. You might want to give your idea to people who are higher up on the chain or whatever. And emotionally, you just want to make sure that you're not risking relationships, the home and family for the sake of being individualistic. Maybe you have different views and values than people in your home and family environment. That's all right. It can cause tension from time to time, obviously, but it's not a bad thing. You shouldn't abandon your views. You should just know how to temper it. For example, I personally think that I have very different views than a lot of people in my family. Yeah, and it's not a surprise because I have Neptune and Uranus in the 4th house. Uranus in the 4th house is what does it, but I also have Neptune there too. So, you know, it's not bad to be different from those in your family, but I don't, you know, bring up our differences every other day. In fact, I rarely ever do, because it's just not productive, you know. Like, what do I gain? What does anyone gain from me shoving my views down their throat? They're not gonna really change your mind in a day. I'm not gonna change my mind in a day. It's not really important to home and family life, you know, so it's important to know how to balance these things. Maybe it may cause tension at this moment because it is a half moon, maybe something arises. So you do want to stick to your guns, but you want to be considerate. You know, Cancer is very thoughtful, very considerate, and you may intentionally know when you're going too far, but emotionally you feel like you must. Be careful. That's all I gotta say, be careful. So now I'm gonna go through the signs. Remember, check your sun, moon, or ascendant. If you don't know what your sun, moon, or ascendant is, surely you know your sun sign. But if you don't know what your moon or ascendant is, you do need your time of birth, and you need to access a birth chart, which I don't know if Michael has it. Check on mysticilluminations88.com if you don't find it there. If you don't find one there, I highly suggest what's that called? Cafe Astrology. I think that's a really great website. Another good website is astrology.com. So yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna just jump into how this half moon is gonna affect all the signs and try to do it briefly. I don't want this to like go over 20 minutes, but we'll see. So for Aries, the moon is in your 1st house, which is begging you. No, it's charging you to be emotionally expressive, emotionally unique, emotionally forward-thinking, which is it's true to your identity. So it's asking you to be true to your identity and urging you to do that. But the sun is in your 4th house, and the sun is asking you to remember responsibilities to family. Maybe you have a family that's dependent on you, or maybe your family, and not necessarily financially dependent on you, but maybe your family is like depending on you or expecting you to be a certain person in society, or to fulfill certain needs around the house, and maybe your emotional needs want you to do something different. For example, I remember I was at this audition for The Voice. How funny. I was at this audition for The Voice, and the guy who was next to me was a surgeon. And he was saying that he was like risking his job for this, in that if he did get on the show, then he, you know, would have to quit his job. And I mean, I don't necessarily know the job market, but I'm pretty sure that a decent surgeon, if he quits his job, could find another job eventually. Like, it wouldn't be too hard. But that reminds me of this type of situation, especially for an Aries, because emotionally you want to do what you want to do and you don't care. But the reality of it is that who you are is, you know, your family is dependent on you in some circumstances, in some cases. In other circumstances, your family may just be expecting you to be a certain person, to act a certain way, to have certain characteristics, and it's coming at odds with who you really want to be. But anyway, let's move on. Taurus. For Taurus, the moon is in their 12th house of rest and relaxation, and Cancer is in their 3rd house. So you may feel like retreating at this time. You may feel like resting at this time. You may feel like just doing, you know, like lackadaisical pursuits, or just like, you know, hobbies, right? Because that's like a form of rest, but like active rest, if you will. But at the same time, Cancer in your 3rd house is like bringing so many people to you at once, so many friends, so many communications, not necessarily responsibilities, but you may just be in the spotlight. For example, let's say you've been trying to work on your writing, or you've been trying to work on some quilt that you're making, and you really set aside time on the 16th to get it done, but then that day, you know, your friend invites you to her birthday party, another friend invites you out to lunch, another friend, you know, does all this stuff, and like emotionally you want to rest and do your own thing, but you feel called to be with your friends. Try to find a balance, try to strike a balance. If you don't get it, oh well. Another thing that I forgot to mention for everyone involved is that this is from the full moon to the new moon. The moon is waning, so it's a process of letting go. You may have to let go of some things that no longer serve you, so let go of some things that, it's kind of like, I forget how they say it, cutting the chaff, or like, I wish I knew the term, but like, you know, just kind of like cutting the excess away from your life. So maybe you have to cut off some relations, or maybe not like end friendships, but just cut off some, you know, ties that no longer serve you. Yeah, they could be, these things could be illuminated. It could be hard because it's the half moon symbolizes tension because it's a square between the sun and the moon, but get her done. All right, now we have Gemini, with Aries in the 11th of social circles, and community, and Cancer is in the 2nd. So make sure that your social circles are not demanding too much of your money. This is something random, maybe it does speak to you, but something I always feel, I'm always aware of when things cost money. So for example, spiritual services that cost money, I tend to look at critically. And the reason why is because I've been scammed horrendously in the past. So that's why. And I mean, like, a reading is sort of different. I mean, it's the same, but it's different. If you don't feel good paying money for like a spiritual service or a community service or a social service, you should be wary, because these are your resources and people will try and jip you in any way, shape, or form possible. It's just what they do. They need it to live, you know what I mean? So just be careful, be wary, be aware, and make sure that your resources are going in places that you know they should go versus places that you want them to go. Make sure you're not buying friends. Make sure you're not buying awards. I remember a while ago, my mom got an email saying like, oh, you're who's who wants to feature you in like the who's who of like doctors in New York or something. I don't know. Just like due to her professional life, due to the, like, it was supposed to be an award, right, essentially. But then they said she had to pay for it. So, you know, clearly, like, you don't pay for awards. If anything, awards should be paying you. You know what I mean? Honestly, like, especially awards that I've gotten, I get paid. I didn't even know I was gonna get paid, but after getting the award, they're like, by the way, there's some money involved, here you go. So that's how awards should be. So be careful of that. Be careful of people trying to get you to pay for things, that, trying to redirect your resources in places that you don't think they should go. Or maybe you need to put in money in something. Maybe you need to put money where your mouth is, and you need to put money in something that you've been reluctant to do. Don't be too tight-fisted on your resources. It's all about balance. Try and figure it out. All right, Cancer. Sun is in your 1st house, Aries is in your 10th house. Again, this is a classic example of career coming at odds with who you are as a person. Your career self can actually be very different than who you are as a person, as a whole entire person, because the career is just one part. I know we spend a lot of our time in our career and it's very important, but who you are, your career is kind of like who you are seen as by others, and who you are as a person is the full story. It's the real deal, you know what I mean? So they don't have to be one and the same. They may come at odds. I feel like if and when they do come at odds, you may want to straighten some things out and clear some things within your own head, because your career should never, your personal life should never confuse who you are in terms of your career life, if that makes sense. Your personal life should never strongly contradict. For example, let's say you're a preacher or a gospel singer or whatever, and you preach up and down all these Christian values, but your personal life just doesn't add up, and personally you're not truly a Christian, it's just something that you do as a job. That's terrible, you know what I mean? It's terrible. And that's a situation where that seems like something that could be represented by this half moon. That's a situation where things don't add up. On the flip side, it could be that in fact, I just saw this on BBC, a friend of mine sent it to me. It could be that your career life is being a scientist, but on the side, in terms of your personal life, you also love ballet and you're like a professional ballet dancer, which to me is also a career, but for the sake of this example, let's say it's just a hobby. Or like you love to sing or you love art. You know, these things may seem on the outside to be very different, but truly, you know, one feeds the other. And a lot of people who are into science will tell you that. A lot of the great people, no shade, but no, like a lot of people in science also have ambitions and passions and hobbies in the arts, whether it's drawing, writing, you know, singing, creating music, or dancing, whatever it is. And it really does feed each other because it allows you to think differently. So here's a seed or something you can think about. Cut away from hobbies and career paths that aren't true to you, but also think for the next cycle. Don't begin it now, but think for the next cycle something that's kind of far removed from your field of work that is also a hobby of yours that can enrich your field of work. All right, Leo, Aries is in your 9th house of travel and intellectual stuff, and Cancer is in your 12th house of rest. Okay, so emotionally you may feel like you want to study more. Emotionally you may feel like traveling, but you may also feel like now is the time to rest, now is the time to relax. Maybe you're on vacation. I definitely think that you may want to resist from traveling beyond your financial means. Resist, because 12th house speaks of losses, financial losses. Resist from wanting an experience that's so far removed from reality that you delve into drugs or things that will harm you physically. And take this time to truly rest. Resist from overworking yourself if you're like, if you want to study during your vacation. You know, like there's some people who, and I commend them for this, there's some people who like, let's say like it's a summer, let's say you're on like a 2-semester schedule and then there's a summer in between. They'll study during the summer for the classes that are coming up in the next semester. Now that's fine, but for you Leos in particular, during this half moon moment, you may want to refrain from that because the sun is saying now is your time to rest. Even though emotionally you want to engage, the sun is saying now is your time to rest, and you may want to cut away from things that take up too much of your time and don't allow you to rest during your rest period, because then you will be pooped out when it's time to work. All right, Virgo. Aries is in your, no, I was gonna say 7th house. I'm like, that's not right. Aries is in your 8th house of occult and hidden knowledge, taboo, sex, other people's money, and Cancer is in your 11th house of, what is it? Social circles. Try not to alienate yourself right now by, bringing up taboo topics. If they're brought up by other people, fine, you know, engage smartly, you know what I mean? But try not to alienate yourself by that. The sun wants to be amongst friends. The sun wants to be around like-minded people. And unfortunately, 8th house topics are so particular, so unique, I guess, that may end up alienating yourself, because, or rather causing tension in your social groups because you hold views and you adamantly express views that are very different from your friends. You know, friends don't have to be twins. Even twins are not really like identical all the time, you know. But, you know, it's okay to have difference of opinion, but you don't want to shove it down other people's throats. You don't want to alienate people, especially before you get to know them. And also, you know, I'm pretty sure countless times awards have been directed away from certain people because they express views that were at odds with the dominant society. So you don't want to hurt your chances of getting an award because you are involved in something you shouldn't be, or you're expressing things that are taboo. There's nothing wrong with expressing things that are taboo, but sometimes you may not want to because you may go overboard without realizing it, especially since the moon is there at odds with the sun. The aggression of the sun may, you know, hurt the emotional expression of the moon. Moving on, Libra, Aries is in your 7th house of relationships, partnerships, business deals. Cancer is in your 10th house. This is a time to be wise about the deals that you make, the partnerships that you create. You probably don't want to create any partnerships right now. You probably want to cut away and delete partnerships that don't serve your career and don't serve who you are as a figure in society. Really examine who you are in society and the relationships that you have that don't elevate you in society. I hate to be judgmental or even classist or just, you know, like, I don't know, like, I think judgmental is the best word. I hate to be judgmental, but some people just, you know, hurt your reputation, period, you know, and it's just not helpful. Now, obviously, if this is somebody who's your best friend, then it doesn't matter how other people view that relationship because that's your best friend. And if that's the tension that arises on this day, then stick with it, you know, defend your friends. But if this is an acquaintance, you know what I mean, that you don't even care too much for, you don't hang out with this person, and they're coming in the way of your career, shut that ish down, you know? Sorry, my friend would say shut that shit down, and then I heard Dan Savage say it, and I'm like, that's where he got it from. That's where I got it from. Yeah, shut that shit down. If it doesn't serve you, like, realize what's important to you in your life. If friendships are the most important thing to you, which, you know, you are a Libra, then fine. But, you know, at the same time, acquaintances shouldn't matter that much. I don't know. I think I'm a very career-focused person, so, like, I can cut a relationship off like that. Like, it's nothing to me. Sorry. Anyway, Scorpio, Aries is in your 6th house of work, health routines, daily routines, and Cancer is in your 9th house of travel. Don't overwork yourself. If you're traveling to a foreign land, be careful. Be careful about the new food that you may want to eat. It may make you sick. You may have, I definitely see food poisoning because the moon does control the stomach. I see food poison, and Cancer, and the sun is in Cancer. I see food poisoning left, right, and center for you, Scorpio. So be careful if you are in a foreign land or if you come across foreign foods, seafood, crab, like, you know, like, be careful because the sun is aggressive right now. You might want to cut away from things, and that's something else. Like, if you do get food poisoning, you're probably going to be excreting a lot, you know, which is what, as the full moon goes towards the new moon, we're shedding a lot of stuff. But on a more practical note, look at the things that you do on the daily basis that's unique. So not necessarily brushing your teeth, let's hope that we all do that, but things like writing in a journal. Things like, especially if you do have a journal, I just want to stick on that. If you're noticing certain negative things in your journal, this is a great time to cut away from it. And to think about them critically, because Cancer is in your 9th house, so you can take a more intellectual approach to your journal and say, oh wow, I always notice that I keep blaming myself for things that, you know, go wrong when I had no power over it. Maybe I should stop doing that. Great. Something else you can think about is your daily routine, how you eat, what are the things that you eat on a daily basis. I definitely see this, I don't know, I keep coming up with food themes, so be careful of the food that you're eating. Be careful of the way you nourish your body. You know, Virgo is very particular as to what they eat, and the 6th house is ruled by Virgo. So, yeah, let me just move on. Sag, Aries is in your 5th house of love, passion, and hobbies, and lovers, and etc. Cancer is in your 8th house of sex and the occult, other people's money. Try not to take advantage of other people's money. It will backfire. Try to, if you are in a place, okay, if you're in a relationship in which your funds are kind of like, you know, all together, which is 8th house activity, try not to let that influence the passionate side of your relationship. Try not to let that evolve into power plays or manipulation. Try to even separate those things. Don't allow it to cause tension. It may cause tension on this day. You may not have realized that the tension was building, but let that go. Let that go if you can. If you need to separate finances in order to feel more expressive with your significant other, go ahead, because we're letting go of things at this moment. Yeah. Okay, Capricorn, Aries in your 4th house of home, family, property, and Cancer is in your 7th house, right, of relationships. So hopefully this doesn't end up in a loss of your property. Hopefully. But if it does, make sure that it doesn't impact your relationships negatively. Make sure that maybe you even have to let go of some relationships that no longer serve you because you see now that they're based off your property, or you see now that your unique home life isn't congruent with those relationships. Maybe you have a family and you don't want to see your kids being exposed to this type of person. It's valid. It's a valid concern. Don't let people judge you for the values that you hold. So yeah, cut them out of your life. I see this more as cutting out relationships for some reason than the need to lose property. But I also see this as if you don't learn your lesson, because it is Capricorn. You know, if you don't learn, if you're not willing to be original in the way that you amass property, in the way that you live your life at home, the way that you interact with your family, perhaps family relationships can suffer. Perhaps you'll lose some of your property, or your property will be damaged, or, you know, I think it's better for you to let go of things, or a great time to let go of, or like to have like what is it, house sales, that's not what they call it, yard sale, because you're letting go of things, and you're letting go of property that no longer serves you. You don't want to clutter your home space. Okay, I'm gonna just move on. Aquarius, Aries is in your 3rd house, Cancer is in your 6th house. Okay, think about how much of a workaholic you are. Where are you on that scale? Do you barely work? Do you get up when you want, go to sleep when you want? Do you go to work when you feel like? Or are you always at work? Do they have to pry you away from your desk, from your office, from whatever you do? You know, do you feel as though you have a good balance? If you do, try to measure that by how many friends you have, or like how much you communicate with friends. Especially if you're more on the workaholic side, I find that success comes when you balance work and relationships. For example, if you're constantly working and when things get hard you decide to double down on your work instead of going and, you know, blowing off some steam with friends in a responsible manner, then you're less likely to succeed. The more successful people decide to, you know, go hang out with friends and just kind of blow off steam and collaborate with friends instead of isolating themselves. So that should be a good barometer for how how you're going about your work life and your daily routines. Also, if you think that you're more on the end of being lazy, try to see what the universe is communicating to you. When you look at your role models, when you look at people in your workplace, when you look at your friends, what do they say most of the time? When you say, "Oh, hey, what's up? What you doing?" I don't know why I stopped, but I know I was on Aquarius. So when you're collaborating with friends and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" So when you're communicating with friends and they say, "Hey, what's up?" and then they say, "Nothing, I'm just, working on this project, working on that project. I'm collaborating with so-and-so on this work endeavor," and your response is always, "Oh, I'm chilling," you might want to think about that, or if your response is, "Oh, why are you working so much?" If the universe is constantly telling you that the people around you, the people you look up to are working and you're not, think about that. Think about some of the habits you can let go so that you work smarter, not harder. And you may want to look online for these things. If you have any sort of concern about your daily routine, go online and look for what you can eliminate, not what you can start. Because this is not the time to start new things. This is the time to eliminate things that no longer serve us from our daily routine, for you specifically, Aquarius. Okay, so that was Aquarius. Yeah, and then for Pisces, Aries is in your 2nd house of resources and wealth. Cancer is in your 5th house of passion. So I think you shouldn't have to sacrifice too much for your passions if it's just a hobby. For example, if you have a business that is centered around your hobby or not, beware of losses around this time. Beware of how you're managing finances. You may be losing without realizing it. If your resources, if you manage your resources in a unique way, in a very original way, in a way that's very different from your peers, consider areas of your resources, consider areas of your life where you can not spend so much. For example, maybe you shouldn't spend so much on books that you never read. I do that, and I had to stop doing that because I know that very successful people read a lot, and it's hard for me to read, but I aspire, and so I would buy a lot of books, especially because my interest kept changing because I have so much energy in Gemini, and so my interest would keep changing and I wasn't reading these books. So at some point I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna buy another book until I finish what I already have. And I stopped buying books for a while, but I also started to realize how rich my library on my Kindle already was, and how much books I had free of charge. You know what I mean? I didn't have to buy the latest book that I heard about, especially since it takes me a very long time to read. So find ways in which your hobbies are draining your resources and try to cut them out. Find ways in which you can cut expenses at your business if you do have a business. If you have a child, find ways in which that child is, eating at your pockets, and figure out how to cut down on their allowance or whatever. It doesn't have to be as a form of punishment, although it may come through a moment of tension. It doesn't have to be through a form of, it doesn't have to come as a negative thing. Maybe you just don't have the resources to fund their lifestyle. Just cut it down. You know what I mean? It will serve you in the long run. It will help you in the long run. And in this new cycle, you may even find a way to use that money. Although I think, well, no, the new cycle will touch on different signs, yes, but similar houses at different points in the cycle. So anyway, that is all I have for everyone. Remember, don't let your individual ambitions and intense desires and emotions come at odds with your true responsibilities, especially at home and in regards to family and in regards to building a foundation in your life. Don't be too risky, but don't be fake. All right, that's all I have, guys. See you next week. Bye.